Good evening and welcome. I'm Sheila Balgobin and I am the Dream Decipherer, and I help you to crack the code of your sleeping dreams so you can sleep sound and dream deep. This evening, I designated this set of three dreams as going back to the future. But let's see what's going on and see if what I pulled out of it makes any sense. In the first of the three dreams, the dreamer reports that the he was back at the flagship building of a large corporation located on a street called Old Street. And despite the enormous size of the building, it was fairly empty, with only a few campaigns of some kind or other being run on the lower floors of the building. The dreamer decided to, for whatever reason, decided to call a gentleman by the name of Kim with the idea of setting up a campaign of his own of some kind. Again, not clear what kind of campaign, but a campaign with lastminute.com, which makes me wonder if it's around travel. But he realized he didn't have enough experience or the right contacts to be able to pull it off on his own. So, and while making this call to this gentleman called Kim, the dreamer was on an upper floor when making the call, and the space where he was actually empty except for himself. Now, while they were chatting on the phone, the gentleman Kim arrived at the office where the dreamer was, and was dressed in a gray 80s style suit. And the dream ends there. In the second dream, which is quite short, there was a number of kids, no age stated, but I would assume young people old enough to be out on the street on their own, wandering in the streets of East London, in the area called Shoreditch, in groups and just clumps. They were not social distancing, they were not wearing masks, and the police were apparently handing out fines because they were violating current restrictions. The dream ends there. And in the third dream, which is even shorter, the dreams got shorter and shorter as they went on. The dreamer reports that he was spending time with his wife. They were holding each other in a tight embrace, and he was excited. And there the dream ends. So, what's going on with these three dreamlets, as I call them? Being that they were all dreamt in close proximity to one another in this apparently in the same night. They have some kind of relationship with one another, but what is that relationship? Well, we'll have to pick them apart and see what we can discover. In the first dream, the dreamer reports being back at this site of perhaps an old job, um, located on Old Street. And I think that the operative word here is old. It's something that's past. Perhaps this is a reference for the dreamer with about old ways or old states of being, perhaps, or old ways of thinking or doing things. Now, this corporation, this corporate building was largely empty, uninhabited, which could be a stand-in for empty rooms in a dreamer's inner house or inner life. And I wonder if there, in the waking life, if there is a void perhaps in the dreamer's working life, that makes him feel like he's in an empty space. And I would imagine that may be related to being having to work at home under lockdown, which the restrictions are supposed to be gradually easing, but we shall see. Now, there were some unnamed kinds of programs that were occurring on the lower floors of this building. And the relative position of things in dreams can be significant, lower as opposed to higher, or parallel in some way. Um, Now, the dreamer was on the upper floors of this building, while these campaigns of unknown type were occurring in the lower regions of the building. Now, there, um, if you extrapolate a little bit here and look at the like at relative positions, particularly in the next bit when we talk about this gentleman in the gray suit, the dreamer was in a higher place. Now, that could mean a higher place in terms of perspective. It could mean a higher place in terms um, spirituality or spiritual outlook. It can also mean psychologically that the dreamer has it inflated ideas that is not, he's kind of off his head, so to speak, or off with the fairies. So the what exactly does that position, a higher position of being in the higher space in this building, actually representing for the dreamer? Now, the person that the dreamer actually contacted to help with this campaign that he wanted to initiate was came m- from a lower place up to where the dreamer was. So there's something about maybe a lower kind of energy, or a lower thought or modes of behavior that are moving up into um, where the dreamer is. So maybe there's something coming from below or on an unconscious level that's trying to come up to the top. And I would ask the dreamer here if there is some part or aspect of the dreamer's life that it seems to be surging from an unknown place, or if there's some unknown or undealt with issues perhaps that are surging to the surface. Now, the this lastminute.com intrigues me. It makes me wonder if this campaign, it has something to do with travel, because usually people go to lastminute.com because of travel at the last minute. And I wonder if this is there's a theme running through these dreams about with regard to lockdown and the ending of it. Certainly, there's something to do with travel. Makes me tend to think that people are now thinking, "Oh goodness, that lockdown is ending. Let's plan our next vacation." Which we won't be able to travel for a while yet, but nevertheless, people are making plans. And I wonder if there's something along those lines that the dreamer is expressing a wish for a break, as we all are. Um, Now, there's um, another question that comes around this is whether there's an area in the dreamer's life that is new or different, in the dreamer's waking life, that is new or different, that the dreamer is unsure or even unaware of how to integrate this new perspective, this new way of doing things, or whatever it is. If there's something new that perhaps needs to be integrated into the dreamer's life. And now, that it was interesting that the conversation between the dreamer and this man Kim started at a distance on the phone, and then the man kind of appears um, in the office. While they were on the phone, he actually turns up in person. It again, it makes me tend to think about an ending of distant conversations and keeping our distance from one another with the gradual ending of lockdown. And I wonder if this is something that is particularly prevalent in the dreamer's mind these days, getting out and getting having direct contact or direct contact with other people. Now, I'm intrigued about this 80s style gray suit. I'm not sure what exactly that means. I mean, my idea of what that means may be different from that of the dreamers and different from that of someone else. So I would ask the dreamer here, what does that mean? What does that shorthand stand for the dreamer? What do gray suits evoke for the dreamer? What do the 80s evoke for the dreamer? So there's a couple of ways that this could be approached. And who was this? Is this person Kim have any relation to or possible meaning in waking life in terms of someone lending assistance in some way, who may be stuck in the 80s or has an older perspective or old fashioned way of doing things, perhaps. Well, moving on from there to the second dream, you have children. And children are, among other things, can be considered a shorthand for the future. After all, we say that our children are our future. So there's on the one hand, on the surface level, it's like children have started going back to school in this past week here in the UK. And I just wondered if this is kind of either a harking to the past, or a vision of the future where normal interactions can start to occur once more. So it's going back to the way it was in terms of having normal school attendance, with looking towards the future, whether you're talking about the children themselves or looking at a normalized future where we can socialize with each other normally. Here, the children can also represent the unknown or undeveloped parts of the dreamer. And I would ask here, well, what were the kids doing other than just wandering around? What do these? How old were they? And what did they evoke for the dreamer? How does the dreamer feel about these young people kind of roaming around, being fined by the police for not social distancing, and not wearing masks? Then if you go from there and you look at the police, or the which could stand in as a kind of shorthand for the what I call the PTBs, the powers that be. Whether they be government, whether it be health officials, but they're people who are basically running everybody else's lives. Um, Now, the police were handing out fines, apparently like confetti, to these young people because they were neither wearing masks nor keeping social distances. So the there's still, in the dreamer's mind, it would seem, or consciousness, that COVID still remains a problem, even while looking to the future, even perhaps to the past, where there were people could intermingle freely and without having to worry about all this other stuff. So there's a behavior that harks to the past, but it doesn't speak to the present or even possibly to the future. Um, how how does the dreamer feel about the police giving fines to these people for breaking the rules? Is that something you feel in favor of, something you think is ridiculous? I mean, what does that evoke for you, that these young people are being fined for basically being young people, and doing things without much concern for what others need to have happen? So, and then there's dream number three. Um, this to me, that it's like, well, the this was the shortest dream of all, and I just wonder what wealth of information or wealth of feeling lies behind a one sentence to describe a dream. um and being that the dreamer and his spouse were hugging one another in a tight embrace, and the dreamer was feeling excited, I just wonder if that's either perhaps could have been have in waking life had have an anniversary approaching, or one just passed, and maybe there's some feelings around that. Or is it kind of a remembrance of when the relationship was new and exciting, and everything was just copacetic? What does that evoke? What feelings were evoked by that? And then again, we always have to remember that the people in our dreams aren't necessarily themselves. So yes, that may have the dreamer may have been hugging his wife, but other than herself, what aspect of the dreamer could that symbol, which was encapsulated as wife, um, also mean for the dreamer? What resonates with regard to his wife with him? There's also another possible explanation, and that again is has to do with on a psychological level, with the inner female or anima that lies within each man, as just as women have an animus, which is an inner male. For men, the anima uh, acts as a counterbalance, and it stresses relationship and connectedness. And I just wonder if this whole hugging tight of this wife may actually be the anima, and an indication for the dreamers at some level that he is in embracing that softer, connected side of himself in some way. So, what actually connects all of these dreams, which seem quite disparate? Well, I've looked at it as going as a back to the future or time shifting, if it to a certain extent. In the first dream, you have the an old building, an old job, and an old building, but yet there were new ideas and new initiatives going on. So I wonder if for the dreamer has reached a point or stage in their waking life where there is a revisiting perhaps of old ways, or old way of thinking, old ways of being, and but a shift has occurred, and it is taking that old stuff and constructing something new that the dreamer has no experience with. So it's new emotions, new ways of doing things. So in the second dream, you have the young people who are the future, as we like to say, as opposed to the old establishment in the form of the police trying to control them and their behavior. So that you have a juxtaposition there of the old order, if you will, as represented by the police in the past, um, clashing with the representatives of the future. So there again, there's this juxtaposition of past and future. And the third dream, you could argue that if the again this balancing between past and future, if you look at it from the point of view that the dreamer was um, waxing nostalgic over the good old days, perhaps when the kids weren't underfoot all the time, where he could spend time with his wife, or when the relationship was new. So, kind of harking back to the good old days, and with or yearning perhaps for the future to be able to return to something similar. So there's past and present, or past and future colliding somehow in the present. That seems to be going on with all three of these dreams. But they certainly generate some interesting questions for the dreamer to look at. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Have a great evening and rest of the week, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye bye.